So I have something in my pocket here that just for $1, this piece of pickleball equipment is gonna add more spin, more touch, more power to your game. You can apply it to your paddle in essentially in 1 minute. And the best thing is, it's only $1. What is it? It's an Overgrip. Now, before you leave this video and mess up my metrics, let me explain as to why changing the Overgrip on your paddle as often as possible is the best thing that you can do for your game. One of the things that we're always told in almost every single racket sport, not even racket sport, but almost any sport out there where you're holding on to whether it be a racket or a basketball or a football, is you have to have a relaxed grip. You cannot be gripping onto your paddle, your pickleball paddle grip tightly. If you do so, if you're gripping it tightly, you essentially create all of this tightness here, and it's very hard to engage the rest of your arm in a natural manner. You end up losing your touch, you end up losing your power. Think about it like this. If I'm trying to whip something, right? I'm gonna grab my son's shirt over here. Imagine you're trying to whip a towel, right? If you're trying to whip something, you'll hold the object loosely, right? And your wrist will also dance, right? If you wanna whip it as fast as you can. If you end up gripping the object very tightly, it's hard to whip it. Notice how all of a sudden, you may not be able to catch this on camera that easily, but it's way more difficult to whip an object if you're gripping onto it tightly. Same exact thing for a pickleball paddle. Now, you may not know this, but changing your overgrip more often. So for example, this is how a fresh overgrip looks like. I change mine every 4 hours because I notice myself at the 4-hour mark, even at 3 hours in, I have to apply a little bit more pressure to hold on to the paddle. The moment you're applying more pressure to hold on to the paddle, the more you're disconnecting your hand from the rest of your arm. So one of my favorite shots to do, as you guys may have seen in my videos, I have a very nice backhand roll or sometimes a flick. To be able to execute that flick or that roll, I have to be very loose of my wrist here, which means I cannot be gripping onto the paddle tightly because I have to accelerate out of this position, right? You see this? I need to be able to accelerate loosely, which also means that my hands cannot be tightly wound around this grip. If they were, I would lose a lot of touch, plus I am losing speed in the process. Now, for myself, I notice 3 hours in, especially at 4 hours, I start being less accurate with my roll, only because throughout the shot itself, I'm beginning to notice my grip slipping a little bit, and in turn, it affects obviously your confidence, and next time around, I may not go for as big of a shot because I know I'm not quite connected to the paddle as I normally would. Now here's the thing, there's a lot of companies out there selling different overgrips. This one right here is a tourney grip. I've been using them since my tennis days. If you buy them individually like this and they're labeled for pickleball paddles, you end up paying more than $1 for them. Keep that in mind. What I like to do most of the time, just buy one of these packs right here for tennis. You normally pay a premium once you try to buy things for pickleball, even though a lot of the equipment is interchangeable. Essentially, just buy one of these right here. This says right here, 50 grips for tennis. Obviously, this fits a pickleball paddle. And 50 of these for $50. That's $1 per grip. And if you decide to change your grip as often as I've been changing it, which is like once every 4 hours, you're talking about 25 cents per hour as an expense. Now here's the thing, you might say, listen Martin, I change my overgrip once every 20 hours. I never notice a substantial difference in my game. Like, it feels good temporarily, but that's it. Sure. But the problem there is, because you change it seldomly, you get used to gripping the paddle as you've been gripping it. So right this moment, even if after this video you go out and you put a fresh overgrip on your paddle, you may go out there and notice very little difference. But if you start doing that as a habit for the next couple of weeks, for the first month, you'll notice it's way easier for you to have that quote unquote loose grip with your paddle. I would say in general, I kind of see this very often between that 3.0 to 4.0 range, where you have players that buy a brand new paddle and they even use a stock grip for like months on end. Or some players will use an overgrip, as I mentioned, but they'll swap it out once every 2 months. And that's not going to be as effective as you swapping it out as often as possible. Sometimes in my tournaments, when I'm playing, I'm swapping them out every 2 matches. Again, that might sound crazy to some people, but it doesn't cost that much, but it's definitely going to affect how well you're connected to the paddle. I've also noticed some people really like those like tacky overgrips. We kind of put your hand to it, and it's a little bit sticky. This is a dry overgrip. Now, normally speaking, if you're sweating, you want to be using these dry overgrips. That absorbs the sweat much better. The tacky ones are normally meant for just cold climate, where it's just really cold and it's really hard to get that friction of your grip. That's where that stickiness helps you and kicks in. One other thing I want to mention for the guys out there that just have big hands, what you should also look to experiment with, put on 2 overgrips. The less contact your hand has with the grip itself, the more likely you are going to be overgripping on the paddle. So this is how it looks when I grip the paddle, right? Everything looks fine. I have a lot of contact, right? So it's easy for me to be loose of it. But if your hand is way bigger, what ends up happening at some point is that you start overlapping your own hand and you have more gaps with the grip. So you have less surface area on the paddle itself, which means that the surface area that is touching the grip, you are applying more pressure doing so. Again, if we're gonna have more surface area and the surface area has good friction on it, that's where we want to be, because the moment that happens, our wrist works less in holding on to the paddle. So we have less tension being built up over here. We're holding essentially our paddle with our forearm. Like, we want to have that forearm engaged to hold the paddle, not the wrist. So the moment the wrist, it's almost like the moment the wrist is kind of holding onto the paddle, which is what happens when it's slipping out of your hands, we disengage the rest of our arm from the shot. But if the wrist is not working much to hold on to the paddle and the forearm, you see that being engaged, that's where we want to be. I'm going to have a link to this particular one in my pinned comment below, so just take a look at that. One other thing you guys might be noticing is the change of settings. I've officially moved from New York City down to Florida, in the Palm Beach Gardens area, just under Jupiter. I'm going to be here probably for the next year or two, just see how things are, changing life up a little bit with our son. But with that being said, I just want to thank everybody that I met in New York in the pickleball community. I mean, that's probably the most fun I've had in the last 2 years since my college tennis days. Met a lot of great people, and as I kind of talk to you guys, I'm going to essentially say thank you on the screen right here of your name. Really cool. You know, I picked up the sport August of 2023, you know, kind of eased into it slowly, met a lot of great people. I met people I never would have met otherwise out of pickleball, and it's just a super fun sport. I think that's why I kind of got really almost addicted to it in an extent. Tennis was so much of a solo sport, mentally speaking, and then pickleball on the other side has so much more camaraderie, and it's just a blast hopping on the court and playing with familiar faces. So I do want to say, for those of you that kind of put up with me, for those of you that invited me to games and all that, thank you so much. I really had a blast meeting everybody and playing as much as I did in New York. But moving forward, my content will be coming out of Florida. Hopefully I do meet great players here, great people here. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys out there.